Thank you. I'm here to talk about a really painful but important topic to many of you all today. But before I do that, I want to get a sense of who's in the room, and I'm going to ask you all some questions. So how many of you all have applied for a promotion and might not have gotten it? And did you get feedback on what happened or why you were not selected? And so then what happened? In your mind, did you go someplace to maybe I'm not promotable or I'm stuck and I'm getting impatient and I'm not really sure what's happening here? Well, I guarantee you today that we're going to get you back onto the pathway to promotability. And I'm going to give you some perspectives because maybe that reality is not in your head. Maybe there was something else at play that you didn't even know was happening at the workplace. My name is Kim Nugent, and I am an innovation leadership coach, and I have been working with aspiring leaders over the last 30 years, having them get to, just like you, to a dream job, to obtain the highest level in their career. I'm also an award-winning author for Did I Say Never? And also 52 Weeks to Exceptional Leadership, and my next book is Promotion Protocol, Unlocking the Secrets to Promotability and Career Success. My passion is engaging leaders, but my passion is also working with individuals so that you can become promotable. You have more confidence, make more money, and step into your leadership role. So when I said before, how many of you all have applied for promotion and didn't receive any feedback, I saw some hands being raised. So can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So can you tell me a little bit about what happened?
So essentially I was working inside of my position doing what we call customer satisfaction surveys and responding out to the customers. Essentially, I was the one who was controlling all aspects of that department for the most part, and I applied for a position for the leadership of that entire department. But I wound up not getting it, received no feedback whatsoever on it, kept putting the bug in their ear multiple times for that position. Nothing ever came of it. So
okay. Thank you so much for sharing. So I heard exactly what you said. I can only imagine how that felt. But did you go to your hiring manager and ask for feedback?
I did not. No.
Okay, so there's a tip, right? Okay, and so a lot of us work in organizations where you don't get any feedback. You might have even applied for multiple positions and you don't get feedback. And so you're wondering what's happening. So what happens is what's going on in your head about self-talk. So the self-talk could go something like this. Gosh, I'm not promotable. I don't understand why my supervisors can't see how great I am. Is that what you want? Or I'm getting impatient. Or, you know, it's probably time for me to exit my company because obviously they don't see the talent here, right? I mean, that's what's really going on. So maybe it is and maybe it's not. So I want to share with you 3 specific examples of something you might not have ever considered and see if you can see yourself in any one of these situations. So the first example is a situation in my organization a number of years ago where we had a director's position open. And in the director's position, we had 4 internal candidates apply, and we had many external candidates apply. Came for the day, we had a panel for all of the internal interviews. So remember the numbers. We had 4 internal, 1 position. This young lady comes in. She is an assistant director in the department that we're looking for. She's dressed professionally. She has multiple copies of her resume. She has a PowerPoint presentation. She answered every question spot on. I watched her as she walked out of the room, and I could tell from her body language she knew she had the job. So we interviewed the rest of the people, and at the end of all of that time, a decision was made to hire an external candidate. The external candidate had much more experience. I took it upon myself to seek this young woman out, and I made an appointment with her, and I wanted to explain what happened. And I said, I want to tell you, on the day of your interview, you were outstanding. You were dressed professionally, you had multiple copies of the resume, the PowerPoint was spot on, you answered every question really well, you know the department. And we've decided not to go with you. We've gone with an external candidate. And the reason is this external candidate has much more experience. So my first question to her was, can you work for the new director? Can you learn from this person? because it's just no right now, but it's not no forever. There's more to be learned. She said she could. I said, I want to tell you something else. On that day when you interviewed, you were outstanding. But in my world, an internal candidate has to be twice as good as any external, because we've seen how you've operated over the last 6 months or 2 years, however long you've been with our organization. So just because you showed up today, awesome, that's not who you've been the last 6 months. So we want to really think about who are we being when we go to work every single day. So that's the first example. Second example is when I was teaching a graduate level class a couple of years ago, and there was a young man in my class, and I would hear him. He worked for this organization for 6 years. He really desperately wanted to be promoted. He had applied, I heard him talking to his friends in class, and he had applied for a job. He had tried numerous times, hadn't gotten it, but he was super excited about this. So he goes and he applies. In the meantime, the next day I'm going to a leadership forum meeting, and I hear the owner of his company speaking about the pathway to promotability. And the owner of the company said, there's one thing we're looking for, and that one thing is excellent communication skills, written and oral. Now this young man, English was not his first language. He struggled, he was getting himself a graduate degree, that's awesome, but this is an area of weakness or opportunity. The next week when they all come to class, he's telling his friends he didn't get the job. He's disappointed, and he's starting to complain badly about management and the organization. I waited till the end of class and I said, can I speak to you for a few minutes? And he said, yes. And I said, I heard the owner of your company talk about the pathway to promotability. And he said, the number one way to do that, the thing we value most in this organization is excellent written and communication skills. He goes, it can't be that. And I said, okay. It's his career, right? All I can do is give feedback, and he can either take it or leave it. That's what we all do. Every single day we have a choice. Life is a choice. That's the second example. But I would believe that he's in denial, truthfully, like the first woman was really frustrated and felt she was entitled to that position. This young man was in denial. Third example. We had a young woman in our department. She was doing a great job. She was very task-oriented. She was an international employee, and we had an opening for a manager's position. She applies. She's given the opportunity to be the manager. We're all excited, but we know that there's a gap. And the gap is she's never managed anyone. So you know the first time that you step into a supervisory position, right? It's rough. And now she's managing her peers. So she got a lot of support, but let's fast forward to the end of her first year, and her performance evaluation was poor. That rocked her world. She had never in her life experienced a poor evaluation. But I want to tell you what she did next. What she did next was she went home that night and she reflected on the feedback. And no one ever likes to have that kind of feedback. But she came back the next day with a vengeance, and she made appointments with every single hiring manager, and she said, what can I do better? And she put together a 360-degree learning platform for herself so that she could improve. And what she was missing, she couldn't understand the American workforce. She got the task part right, she just didn't get the emotional connection part right. That's what she went to work on. Fast forward the next year, she got an excellent job performance evaluation, has excelled in her career. So super proud. So like, what do you do with the feedback? It's your choice. But in looking at these three examples, do you see yourself? But if I go back to the original example of the young woman who did not get the job, if I just do the math and nothing else, we had 4 internal candidates applying for 1 position. So obviously 3 people at a minimum are going to be disappointed about that. So you never know what's really happening at play in terms of why. But I hope that you have someone in your organization that you can go to, a coach, a mentor, someone who can give you the kind of feedback, and ask them, how can I get better? Not how come I didn't get the job, but what can I do to improve, because I see myself staying with this organization a really long time. So I want to get you guys back onto the pathway to promotability, and I believe that there really are 5 steps, 5 tips. So the first one is self-awareness. Self-awareness is key. So how well do you know yourself? How well do you know your strengths, your weaknesses? Have you taken any online assessments? Personality, communication, emotional intelligence, mindset, career, leadership? Do you have any blind spots? Well, if you knew what they were, they wouldn't be blind spots, right? So as I was coming to the meeting the other day, I was driving down the freeway and thinking about that word. And I was thinking, you know, a car has blind spots, right? But sometimes you get distracted when you're driving. You're sort of on autopilot, and then you kind of merge over, and then all of a sudden what happens? You notice someone's in your blind spot. What could potentially happen is like that. That's what can happen in your career. If you absolutely don't know what your blind spots are, it is going to kill your career, and you didn't even see it coming. So until we're really willing to look at ourselves and self-assess, there's no way that we can anticipate how we can get better. If you don't know what you need to change, you don't even know where to start. So self-assessment is absolutely key. Number 2, attitude. Do you have an attitude? And I don't mean bad. I'm talking about a positive attitude. Or are you Debbie Downer, positive Paul, know-it-all Ned, somebody else? What would people say, positive or negative? So maybe you think, hey, Kim, I got this. I'm great. I have a fantastic, people really like to engage with me. They don't shy away from me or avoid me in the hallway. They like come and, you know, talk to me, and it's great. Let's test that theory. What about under stress? So, got to see that this week. Was coming on a plane, and we were on the plane, and everyone is going to work, or they've got commitments, or they've got connections, or whatever. So the captain comes on and says, we have a mechanical problem, and it's going to be 20 minutes. Everybody's cool with that, right? And if it's not 20 minutes, we'll come back to you. Everything's still okay. 20 minutes later, he comes back on. It's more serious than we thought. We're going to have to get a part. Okay, 30 minutes. Now it's fast forward 2 hours later. So you can only imagine there's no air on the flight. The air conditioner's shut down. They're trying to resolve this problem. A lot of people are getting stressed out because they've got connections, they've got meetings, they've got commitments, everything else. And in that moment, this is where I love giving talks, because I have to look at myself. And who am I being in that moment about attitude? And I decided, sitting in that seat, that it's a choice. Like, I could choose to be positive, or I could choose to be negative. 50% of the plane was irate. But I'm thinking, if they're telling us there's a mechanical problem, I'm going to listen to that. I don't think we probably need to get in the air and then have them determine there's a mechanical problem, right? So I'm good. Now, I realize internally, I'm thinking it through. I have a connection. I've just missed my connection. I have a meeting. I've just missed that meeting. So Kim's already working on plan B. But in that moment, I had to decide who I wanted to be, because at the end of the day, it's about attitude. So again, thinking about a self-assessment, let's go back to self-awareness and attitude. So if we had a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being poor and 10 being excellent, how would you rate yourself? Don't raise your hand, don't tell me. But there's areas of opportunity for all of us, right? So the third is brand. Now that might be a surprising word to you. You think, brand, that's what companies do. That's not something I have to do. Actually, you have to develop your own brand. And you need to be intentional about it. And if you haven't, guess what? You might already have a brand. Is it nondescript, sloppy, vague, or is it something else? So what is brand when it comes to us? Brand is, how do you look? How do you dress? How do you carry yourself? How do you communicate? There's another part, equally as important today, and that is social media. Who are you being in social media? Your posts, your pictures, do they help or do they hinder? If you have any concerns about that, go back and check. And the reason is, in today's world, there's nothing off the record. I think you've seen enough examples out there in the news about when someone has posted something, might have lost their job. Another possibility is they might have gotten hired because they're doing something fantastic in the community. So it can go either way. So if you have any concerns, go back, become intentional about your brand so that you can be known in your company. Number 4, communication. So if you've seen any of those models out there, 7% of communication is verbal. It's what we say. 93% is body language and tone of voice. So, having said that, sometimes our body language and our tone of voice is so much louder than anything we could ever say. Let me give you an example of that. Had an employee a number of years ago, and she was amazing. And I noticed one day she seemed really stressed out. So I asked her about it, and she said, well, my husband lost his job about 6 months ago, and now it's critical. We really don't have any money. We've blown through our savings, stressing me out because he's the primary breadwinner. I said, I get it. I said, I don't want to overstep my boundaries, but I said, if you'd like to have a conversation tonight with your husband, invite him to come to my office and I'll be happy to do a mock interview. Let's find out what the problem is. She said he sent out hundreds of resumes. He has gone on interviews. He can't seem to close the deal. He had been laid off. He makes an appointment, but before he makes the appointment, I said, please send me a copy of a job description of a job you really want. Because I needed to make it real for me. I needed to learn about his industry. I needed to have those questions that would really work. He comes in, he's dressed professionally, he has the resume, he sits down, we do the mock interview. I just go through it. I just want to see who shows up, right? So we do it again, and I asked him, can we do it again? And he said, yes. So I asked him a question, he would respond, and then I would say, okay, let's reframe that response. We did the interview all the way through again. I said, let's do it again. We did it a third time, and by the third time, he was starting to get it. So then I said, I want to do a debrief at the end of this. And so he said, okay. And I said, I want to tell you what I saw. What I saw who walked into my office today in that first interview was a guy who was incredibly well dressed. You had the academic and experience credentials to be able to get the job. You had the resume. You answered all the questions just fine. I would never hire you. And I wouldn't hire you for this reason. The body language was so strong. You are so angry and you have such a grudge with your former workplace that until you can release that, nobody's going to hire you. Now, it was a little harsh for him, right? Because, but he took that information and what he decided to do was use it. And then the final thing is that he went out and he applied that next week for his dream job and he got it. Yes! And finally, what I want to say is the fifth one is mindset, probably the most important of all. And mindset is, are you in a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? And there are probably areas in your life where you might actually be in a fixed mindset, but start to change that. And the last thing I want to say is the workplace statistics today are a little bit staggering. So having said that, what I mean by that is that the majority of workers today are disengaged. 50 to 75% of leaders in those leadership positions are ineffective. How many people would agree with that? Okay. Raise your hands if you've worked for an exceptional leader. Yay, you guys are very lucky to have the opportunity to be able to do that. The other thing at play right now in terms of the workplace is the generational facts. Baby boomers are retiring at a much higher rate than ever before, and we cannot replace the talent overnight with that kind of experience. We have talent in the organizations. Many of those positions are unfilled. So what's the solution? What we've got to be able to do is do coaching and development to be able to get people where they need to be. Having said all of that, I want to ask you a question. Do you accept the workplace situation as I just described it with those numbers, or do you want to become an agent of change? An agent of change is what I heard, which is awesome, which I think is definitely possible. So now is your time. Step into your power. Claim it. Stand out. Can you imagine what our world would be like if we had inspiring, exceptional leaders across all industries? Can you imagine what your life would be like if you were coached into greatness? So let's self-assess, take that first step, and make a world a better place in the workplace. Thank you very much.